Good morning. Oh, lots of sound. Welcome to this fourth TEMO lecture. We are digging into the TEMO toolbox again. And the past times we have started by discussing the why, the value creation. We looked into the business model generation. We also talked about what. And today we're going to dig into how we're going to do it. And that's why we're going to use the STAR model. And that's our approach to going from a business model and a strategy into how do we implement it and how do we change things in a company. So the agenda is very simple. We're just going to follow up on the SWOT, on the Squatty Potty, and then we're going to the STAR model and see how can we design an organization structure and see how does that translate into control change and entrepreneurship. Then we're also going to have a talk show from Novo Nordisk, because they work a lot on organizational change, and they are I believe, one of the really great companies in Denmark. They've done a lot in changing and optimizing their processes within the last couple of years. So it's an interesting company. And of course, there's a wrap-up in the end. And you are, as always, welcome to ask questions and participate, because that's what makes this fun, at least for me. So, following up on the Squatty Potty last time, we left you with a small task. Do a simple SWOT analysis on the Squatty Potty. So anyone thought about this? Anyone had any comments? What are the strengths and weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats that you see when you look into a Squatty Potty? Of course, we don't know a lot about Squatty Potty. We don't know a lot about the internals, but maybe we can deduce something from just watching the video and watching how Squatty Potty performs. Any takers? Any ideas? What do you think? Yeah.
It's cheap to manufacture, which is definitely a strength. Its weaknesses, it's a niche thing. It's not really.
So how come it's a weakness and it's a niche? The good thing about a niche is that maybe you're below the radar. Maybe other companies say, well, we might not want to go there. They are already entrenched in the niche.
But it's also a very narrow customer segment.
Yeah. Anything? Nope. Other comments? So we have some strengths and some weaknesses. Are there opportunities? Are there threats? I'm sure. Yeah. Could you throw the mic in?
One threat is that it's quite easy to replicate, so everyone can decide from the next week to produce something identical.
Exactly.
If there is any specific patent or.
And that particular threat, that also has to do with a weakness. Can you come up with a weakness that translates into that threat? It's easy to copy. That means there's something about intellectual property.
Yeah,
that's
even though like they have a patent until they can just change a bit the design and produce something that can be used at the same way.
Exactly. It's really difficult to patent something that's not a mechanism. It's basically just a design. It's a stool. I mean, we had stools for as long time as we have had people. So it's difficult to have these patents or anything, or just at least a technology thing that can protect your market. So they're huge threats, but they also have another strength. They're good at branding. When you think of these stools, most people think of, some people think of Squatty Potty. They're very good at branding. They're very good at positioning themselves in the market. And that's really a strength. And that's also what gives them some opportunities. It's a known brand. So when they approach a company or a chain, they will have the opportunity and people will recognize and say, oh yeah, we heard about Squatty Potty. It's been used some of these places. I visited a food company yesterday. They produce industrial goods and they produce about 60 million pølsehorn each year. That's a lot. And they have sort of the same strengths and weaknesses. They don't have any patents. They don't have any specific technologies, but they do have a good brand. They do business-to-business sales. They have a very strong connection to the market. but they always have to work with their customers, always make sure that they know their brand, they know their prices, they know the strength of their product, because they have no way of protecting themselves through patents. They cannot come up with a new design of a pølsehorn or a new type of sausage or anything to put in. It's basically they are all of it. So it's easy for them to be threatened by other companies, and anyone can set up a company producing pølsehorn. It's a niche, yes, but they have to entrench themselves very deeply in this niche and make sure that their business customers, they don't go other places. So yeah, branding, advertising, perhaps design and customization is also an internal strength. If some of you looked at their website, I mean Squatty Potty, they have a lot of different variants. They're good at not advertising, but adapting to a particular situation. So you're old, so you're young. We develop different types to feed each of these different needs. So no patents, no specific technology. So copycats and substitutes, that's really what they're looking out for. So any other comments for Squatty Potty? Because that was sort of I like the simplicity of the SWOT analysis. I mean, we don't know a lot about Squatty Potty, but still we learned something about the market. We can deduce something about the internal strength of the companies and the threats they face. And also, if we were to invest in a company like Squatty Potty or anyone else who has the same characteristics, we immediately get an idea, what should we look for? If they don't have a really, really strong brand, if they're not recognized in the market, then they are under huge threats from both copycats and companies that deliver just similar products. You need to have a strong brand in this situation. So we turn to how should we implement a business model. And the tool that we suggest, or we dictate in this course, that's called the STAR model. It's actually a quite simple model. It basically says that in a company you have 5 elements. These 5 elements are strategy, which is the direction or the mission of the company, what gives us the competitive advantage. It's about the structure, who does what, power, authority. It's about the processes, and that's mainly the information processes and the networks in the company. It's the reward systems, how do we pay, what do we give rewards for, how do we motivate people, and it's the people processes. And people processes is about who do we select, who do we hire. Do we hire the brightest or the cheapest or the best or someone who has particular skills? And it's also an alignment theory, which means that every time you pull in one of these corners, you affect the other corners of this pentagon. So every time something changes, there has to be an adaptation. And usually we start with a strategy. It's usually the strategy where we start. And that's why we have to remember that there's a difference between a business model, which we've been looking at the last couple of times. A business model is basically a set of rules. We're going to do this to make money, and a strategy. A strategy is more flexible in the sense that it's a framework for desired performance. If you have a good strategy is a formulation of what we want to achieve, what is our mission and vision. It allows your employees to say, well, we want to be the best company at delivering something, then I should, in this situation, choose a specific path. The food company I visited yesterday, they had a strategy, say, well, we want to be design-oriented, which means we always have the customer in focus. Every time we make a new food product, we have intensive dialogue with customers. We also want to be the healthy alternative, which means it has to be chia seeds and the latest skier products and whatnot. So it gives the employees a direction. If faced with a choice, the strategy gives you a direction of what choice to make. That is the basic idea of a strategy. But it's also when we move into the STAR model, the strategy sets the direction, sets what to do and what not to do. If you were a company that says, well, we're going to deliver nice breakfast alternative, it has to be tasty, it has to be crisp, and it has to be easy. It doesn't have to be healthy. Then your employees know that, well, I just have to deliver something. It might be fatty, greasy, ugly, but it's nice and tasty and it's easy to deliver. So we can choose not to incorporate all the healthy alternatives. It gives a direction. But it's the first element in the STAR model. It's always, not always, but it is the thing that, we have a new direction, so we have to change all the other elements. But sometimes we look at structure, processes, rewards, and people, And we say, well, there's a mismatch between what we want to do and the company and the people and the processes, and then perhaps we should change strategy. Perhaps we should just formulate and go the direction that can actually be supported by the people we have and the structures we have. So there is always an alignment. There's always something that pulls back and forth in this star model. And that's what makes it difficult to use, but also very interesting, because it's always an alignment. Every time you pull one corner, you have to fix the other corners as well. And when you go into writing your report and coming up with the challenge, that's also what you have to do. You come up with something that has to be done in your company, and you have to go through all the steps in the star model. And it can be thought of as a sequential model, but actually every time you choose something, you affect all the elements of the corners. Then we have structure. Central issues is specialization, shape, power, departments. Who should be in what department? What should the functions and departments do? So we can choose to create units based on knowledge and skill. We have an engineering department, we have an IT department, we have a service department. Or we can divide into time. We have morning shift, late shift, summer workers, winter workers, all by products. In our food company, they had something that was crisp and something that was not crisp, which was bars, which are wrapped differently. It could be customers or clients, which also could translate into a geography or market, all by process. We have someone who handles one type of process and someone who handles another type of process. And then we can think of it as in the simplest form, it could be a functional structure, which means that, again, we have the economy department or the financial department. That's one function. We place them to themselves. And then we have another department, which are the production department. They work well together. And that works well until the company becomes too big. And then suddenly we need some sort of divisional structure, which means that some of the functions needs to be in each division. Otherwise, it's going to take too long to coordinate and communicate between each of the functions. They become too specialized, and there's a bigger need to coordinate, so each of the functions needs to be also put into the divisions. So each division, basically we say that if you have a divisional structure, then all the functions should be present. But reality dictates that sometimes it's more feasible to have some of the functions, but not all functions of a company in a particular division. And that, again, a division principle could be product, it could be geography, it could be market, depending on the situation that fits the particular company well. We talked about this lateral versus vertical coordination, but it's basically, should we have a strict functional structure, or should we have project organization? The consultancy companies we have seen so far, they are all, both of them talked about a mix. So we have projects, but we also have functions with specialists. That allows us to get the best, they think, in that situation, the best skills for the job. So each time we approach a new customer, we start a project, and we draw from the specialist functions we need to deliver the best service for our client. The problem of the balance structure is that each employee will have two masters, two leaders. You have to serve your functional leader, but you also have to serve the project manager. And that's always a tension between the two. So if you have to prioritize, well, where do you deliver your time? Of course, there can be a very strict time management system, but still, you have to answer to two warlords, basically. And which one do you serve? So it usually creates some sort of tension. It can be handled, of course, and many companies use this, but just be aware that there is a tension, and that tension has to be coordinated and resolved. When we're growing and when we're more than one person, there's an increasing need to coordinate, and that's between the functions and divisions. And what's not said in the book is that, or not stated clearly, there is an underlying social dynamic. Every time you create a group, this group becomes coherent. It becomes self-referring, and the group or team starts to protect itself. And the group also develops its own worldview. So when the group gets an order, there is a new vision or a strategy, the group goes into a sort of what does that mean for my group and what does it mean for us? And we have our own interpretation. We are our own group and a separate identity. But they need to work together to deliver the product. And therefore we need a lot of tools to coordinate. And some of the things we can do to coordinate is that we can give authority to someone. I mean, this is very basic. If you own a company, then who has the authority to buy stuff, to spend money, and how much money can they actually spend? And what types of decisions can they make? Every time we give authority, we also make the process faster, but we also lose an element of control. So there is always this tension. Where do we allow and to what degree do we allow our employees or our colleagues to make decisions? That translates into the chain of command or the hierarchy of authority. If I need a decision made, who do I have to contact? Do I have to go 5 steps up into the organization because this is an expensive piece of equipment, or can I just make the purchase decision myself? Sometimes when companies are getting tight on cash, there's an email coming out. Every expenditure above 200 euros, you have to talk to a manager. And sometimes the order comes out, well, if there's any expenditures, you can't spend any money. Well, we're out of money. And it's also, can you actually see this? I mean, span of control. Oopsie. So it's also about span of control. And span of control means how many employees are direct reference to me. If there are a manager who has many direct references, many employees that he has to manage, then he loses some of his personal connection. From an economic standpoint, you say, well, it's nice to have a huge span of control because it's cheaper. You have one manager managing 70 people, perhaps. But when managing 70 people, of course, you cannot have a personal relationship with 70 people. And then you lose an element of control. So where's the right balance? Some companies, they start to make teams when they approach 10, 15 people because a manager with a control span of more than 10, 15 people cannot have a sense and an individual relation to each of these 15 employees. So it's a tension between this, what do you want to achieve and how much discussion do you need to make the company run. This also translates into this tall and flat organization. The company I visited yesterday, the food company, very flat organization. They had 145 employees, but the very flat and very quickly reacting nature means that there's a lot of coordination. Every time something happens, it always goes up to this level, and there's a need for coordination. So this flat structure works very well in a market that requires a dynamic approach. Every time something changes, then you have to discuss and make changes. Whereas this tall organization, which will look very bureaucratic, it's very good at delivering orders from top to bottom because for each node, the control span is very low. You have one person and then he just talks to 2 people who talks to 2 and so on and so forth. So commands from top to bottom goes fast. But if you need to coordinate at this level, then the connection is up there. You have to go all the way up and then down again. So so coordination at that level becomes expensive and difficult in a tall organization. Depending on situation, that might be very useful. In an army, you want something who can react very quickly to the top commander. That's where this structure is very nice and easy. But you don't want everyone in the organization to discuss. So armies, good for this, or very stable organizations, very stable markets, bureaucracies, very good for tall organizations. But if you have to react quickly to the market, well, you need something like this. And the food company yesterday, so flat. I mean, they didn't really have an organizational structure. They had what they call a control group or control team who met once in a while. And every year they had a strategy day where everyone from production, there were just 5 in development and just, I think, 120 in production. Everyone was meeting up, discussing what type of products can we make. We have this and this facilities, this and this equipment. How can we develop products that fits our company? Very flat organization, but very responsive to the environment.
Yes, so Kasper has now shown you how we can organize and structure the work in an organization. And in the following 3 slides, I will show you a vocabulary to understand these type of tensions. So Kasper has named authority and power and tensions and coordination. But the vocabulary for this is what we talk about power and conflicts. So we have, you can say, 4 different types of conflicts. We can classify a conflict. We have the what we call it, the interpersonal conflict, where we have people to people. So if you think about the soft performance case that you worked with, and you have Casper and Luke, and they discussed, okay, so which market should they address and how should they solve the problem that they have in their company. Then we move up inside the organization to the intra-group, so you will have conflicts between groups. As Casper said, it could be between sales or R&D. So we have different interests that we need to take care of. It could also be that you have, within a group, intra-group is when you have within a group, and then you have the intergroup, which goes across groups. That's inside the organization. When you look then outside, then you have the inter-organizational conflicts. And that's where, for example, where you have companies competing harsh on a market. It could be, for example, with the online food chain. So now you have both Coop and Nemlig, for example, competing for customers that would like to buy the groceries online. It could also be, as the news, as you heard this morning, from Post Denmark or Post Norden, who now has absolutely no resources, a huge deficit, and they're competing against GLS and DHL, etc., about the market for transportation and logistics and handling mails and packages. Yeah. So that's a classification of conflicts that you need to know. There's the in-house or the internal conflicts, and then there's the one where you go across organizations. But if we look at the sources, how come that we end up in conflicts like this? As Casper said, it could be tensions. If we look at the overlapping authority, if you go back to the balanced matrix, so you have 2 managers. So who is actually a manager? Is it the project manager where the money is made, or is it the functional manager where you're basically your function, or the where you are hired, or where you have colleagues with a similar discipline? So you have the overlapping authority. You could also have task interdependencies, which can create bottlenecks or delays in the production or in the process. So that's also where you need to be aware of, if you look at your cases and challenges, how are the tasks that they conduct, how are they linked. You can have incompatible evaluation, which basically means that what we say we are being evaluated on is different in the case of what we really appreciate. So, for example, if you take in consulting, you would say we need to document the knowledge that we have, so please put it into our different types of databases. But in practice, that is not where the money is made. So the incentive to do this is very low, because you would rather just share knowledge in your relations, in your networks, because that's where you can see that you create a value. So you have one incentive system saying you need to put the knowledge into a database, and another incentive system which says that I would rather just share it with my colleagues. Scarce resources, that is classic or normal in more or less every organization, that we don't have enough resources, so how do we share? How do we prioritize? Status inconsistencies is more in terms of if you take the line organization. We didn't have that on Casper's slides. So when you have the line and the staff, so let's say you have HR, for example, that is a staff unit, and you have the line where the value is created, where the main production is taking place. So basically, where the money is created has normally higher status than if you take the staff units. And then the incompatible goals and time horizons that we don't really know. For example, if you take the sales people, so what are their goals? Or you have the R&D, what are their goals? If their goals are not aligned, if we look back at the STAR model, so if we look into the incentive, the reward structures, if that is not aligned, then we can also have a source of conflict. So these are some of the examples. So you have the where can it take place and the why the conflicts could arise. Then when you want to do something about it or understand who has the power to do something about this or to do this, of course you have the information, who controls the information in the organization, and who has specific knowledge that can actually influence the situation that you're in. Then another source of power is if you have control over the allocation of incentives, where you can also then when you can add to a conflict or you can solve a conflict. Connectional power is more in terms of relations. So what is your network? Do you have lunch with the manager, or do you have lunch with the director, or you play tennis or golf with one or two people who has higher up in the hierarchy than you are? The expert power is specialists. So especially you as engineers or us as engineers, then we have an expert power with specialists, and means that we maybe be in a specific situation where we cannot be missed. So we have a strong power here, or high power, which makes us hard to fire. Reference power is more in terms of trust and respect. So people relate to you because you have a certain character. And then you have the legitimate power, which is basically the position. So that is where we have the line organization with the CEO, for example, in the top. And then the cohesive power is where we have the ability to punish and fire, which is also related to the position. So you have, where can the conflicts, where do they take place? Outside or inside the organization? How come they occur? What is the source of the conflict? And then the source of the power, who has the ability to do something about the conflict? Yeah?
Well, before moving into the process, I have a question for you. Based on the company, the food company yesterday, there was an interesting discussion. They have 6 people and 2 functions. The 2 functions are innovation. Innovation means that are the products they develop themselves and sell directly, and usually that turns into huge amount of income, lots of dollars. And then you have what they call product development. Product development is customers, existing business customers, that says, well, we've seen your cookie. Could you make it with a different kind of glazing and wrap it differently? So that's product development. And there's someone actually paying for the time spent on product development. So the question is, should these 2 functions be 2 departments or 1 department? What do you think? Wakey, wakey. Where's the throw thing? It's a question. Yeah.
Well, there can be some benefits in it being a single department, since the innovation part might be influenced by the people or by the orders they get from separate companies.
Yeah, that's one point, and I totally agree. Another point here, throw. Yeah, hit someone.
I mean, if it was a larger number of people, I think there could be an argument for splitting it up because it is sort of, the product development is more, what do you call it, programmed work. It's more predictable and such, while the innovation is has to be more flexible. So it's 2 different kinds of work.
Yeah.
But I think the 6 people, maybe it also pulls it towards being a single group.
So there's something about knowledge, group coherence. I agree that 1 department would be my initial reaction. And what they did is that they run with the 1 department for several years. And what happened was that because there is a direct source of income, they always tip towards product development, which means that they never get to develop and do their own innovation. So every time there's a choice between these 2, well, we get money for doing product development, so let's do that instead. So the level of innovation was simply declining very rapidly. So instead they decided to take these 6 people and split them into 2 teams. I mean, 1 team is just 1 person who is doing product development, and then we have a 5-person team who has to focus, as you say, you have to have group coherence, and they have to focus on innovation, they have to spend the time on innovation. And it's interesting and counterintuitive, but when you get the logic that you always go for the money, the intrinsic money, then it makes sense to divide it into innovation and product management.
Yeah, and that's why I think if you look into the status inconsistencies, that is where you can see that the status between these 2 groups is different. So having them in the same unit actually means that you have a source of conflict. So that's why it can, if you take this model and apply it on this, you can say, okay, it actually makes good sense to split it up.
Good. So processes. This is basically about the group. You've seen this before. Every group, every time you set up a process, every time you get a team together, they go through these 5 phases: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And the purpose is simply to compress the first 3 stages, forming, storming, norming, and then we start performing. Do it as quickly as possible. You tried that in your groups, and sometimes, even when you change task, it also changes the group dynamic. So when you go into writing the report, you might think, oh, we're at the performing phase, but the dynamics change because you have to write, and then you go through forming, storming, norming again. Again, it's the essence is to try to compress this as much as possible. Another issue is task interdependency. These are 3 different types of task interdependency, going from very little task interdependency to some to a lot of. This is your basic group work where no one coordinates, everyone just delivers a piece of text or one piece of the puzzle. You don't coordinate anything. You just set up the framework and then everyone delivers. But you're not interdependent. Here in a sequential production, then every time someone delivered something, you have to react to that and then the product changes. But in the reciprocal performance, every time someone changes something, it has implications for the other parts. And that's the essence of a good report, essentially, is that, oh, I've changed this in discussion. Well, that leads back to the intro and so on and so forth. And that also translates into organizations and product development and all sorts of organizations that has these types of products or tasks where one person's changes affects the other guys in the group or the team. But it's also about controlling. That's one of the functions of managers, also always controlling. I mean, I like this very old. It's not that I am inclined to this, but trust is good, believe me. I think that a high level of trust gives us a lot of coordination. But if we don't have the element of control, then people are beginning to subvert the system. So there needs to be some sort of control measures. And basically, and this is mainly based on IT, we're going to have input stage, we're going to have conversion stage, and we're going to have output stage control. Anyone has an example of an input stage control? You've all seen them, you all used them. Maybe you're not aware of it. Anyone? Every time you fill in a form on the web, it's input control. It's just simply made to ensure that it's the right formatting, you get the right information, and you can go to the next stage. In the old days, before we had input control, then you often had a process that started by someone writing blah, blah, blah. I didn't really have the right information, but we need something like this, and send it on in the next chain and the next link in the chain. And the next link in the chain said, well, I can't use this for anything. And the first link in the chain said, well, I've started the process. No, you just made noise in the organization. That's why we have input control. We make sure that we have the right information in the beginning so we can begin the process. And of course, the output stage, we can look at what are the results, what are the products, what are the actual numbers. It also turns into these 4 steps in organizational control and performance management, as I talked about the first time. Simply establish standards and targets. What is it that we're looking for? And then measure performance, and then go into follow-up on targets. Who delivered that? Who didn't deliver? And evaluate. And when you have evaluated, then you go into the 4 steps of 4 steps in management plan: organize, lead, and control. And I like the audio company here, which are so much behind. I mean, budget is a green one, and you have actual, which is a blue one. So there seems to be a discrepancy here, and that discrepancy is just growing. So someone has to do something. Someone has to change something. But every time you implement a control system, you have measures. It's important to stress that you get what you measure, but just make sure that what you measure is what you really want. So this link between the two. Then we have organizational control system. We basically divide them into 3 types of organizational control. There's output control. I mean, there's financial measures, cost ratios, and the organizational goals. We've set up goals to do A, B, and C. Did we actually do that? In a financial company, that's, well, you have to deliver X number of sales. We need so many new clients. And it's also budgets. Are you on budget? In a public system like a university, we always struggle for budgets. in the sense that the first 3 months of the year that, well, we don't have a budget, so we just slump along. And the end of the year, did we actually spend all the money? And in November, people find out, well, we didn't spend the money, and everyone is scrambling to spend the last money. It's pathetic. But that's how our control can work. Then we have behavior control. Of course, we have direct supervision, the boss standing on your shoulders. Oh, are you doing what you're supposed to do? But it's also something called management by objectives. That's also tied to the organizational goals. But management by objectives essentially means that there is a negotiation all the way down in the organization between the manager and his subordinates. What are you supposed to do and how are you supposed to deliver that? So there is a personal relation here. And that can be interpreted as a bad thing, but it can also be interpreted as a very good thing if there is a level of respect between manager and his subordinates. Because it allows a team to divide tasks between them. So if you have a team, you have strong performers and you have newcomers and weak performers. So management by objectives allows you, the managers, well, you're one of the good guys. You're really strong at this and you're fast. So you take a bigger piece of the pie, and then you have the newcomers. They shouldn't deliver the same. They need to have a lower level of performance objectives. So you can balance the organizational needs. And of course, you have bureaucracy standards. In this situation, you do this. Okay, if I get this order, I just go and do whatever I have to do because it's in the manual. But that only works if you have very stable environment and very stable sort of products and tasks. Otherwise, you need people that can actually think about what they're supposed to do. And the last end, we have clan control. Essentially, this is social control. This is what we as employees impose on each other. We have values, we have norms, we have what we call socialization. And when we get a new colleague or new one into the group, then there is a socialization process. We impose our values and norms on that person. And that might lead to conflict and tension, and in the worst end, you get bullying and problems. But it is a social control system. And if we have strong norms and values, we assume that when we get new people into our organization, we can socialize those people into our norms and values. So companies growing fast, they face problems with clan control. Because you get so much new blood, new people into the organization, that the socialization mechanism doesn't work. It might be good because we get new ideas, new ways of doing things, but it might also be bad if there was some sort of cultural DNA, a good thing of a good way of working that really is functioning for us. Then you want socialization. It's not something you can write down, but it's a culture, it's a way of working, it's a set of values, it's a perception. Then we have reward systems.
Yeah. I think you want to take the stage. No, then when we enter into the reward systems, the primary focus that you need to have is to look into the different types of motivation theory. I think I need this one instead. And as you can see, there are different here. We have listed different theories that you need to look into, and I would strongly encourage that you know these different types of theories, both in terms of the exam, but also when you start working with your challenges, and of course the cases in the afternoon. But I'll share one with you here, and that is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, it consists of 5 levels. So we have to meet the basic level, the bottom level, the physiological needs, before we can actually move up, or we are motivated to look into our safety needs. So do we have time for a small, yeah. So if you look at yourself as engineers, or we could call you knowledge workers, where would you place you? Which needs do you think are met in our type of jobs, if you look at this hierarchy? None of them, all of them, few of them? Could you take like 30 seconds with your neighbor? Yeah? Yes. Good to hear you talking. I could see some of you talking and you have the microphone. Would you share what you talked about? What do you think is met in our types of jobs normally?
Physiological needs are obviously met.
Yeah. And
Safety probably as well, because engineers usually have good salaries. And then the top three could depend on what kind of engineering job you have.
yeah.
Definitely the two top ones, if you have a very challenging job where you get to use your skills and use your skills to create value, then you'd have self-actualization and esteem.
Yeah.
But if you have a very boring sort of slave programmer job, then with this, a very boring programming job, for example, then you might not meet the top two. So
No.
it depends on what kind of engineering job you have.
I agree with you. But if we take like a normal engineer that is being challenged by the job that he or she is doing, it has high demands and it changes all the time, and you don't know tomorrow before you're there, and you really get to the limit of your capabilities. Then normally you would place knowledge workers up in the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, you have a question? Yes.
I have to say, do you hear me behind me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Yes.
That's it. When we look at the star structures, is indications of how the knowledge is constructed. And if we look at the level of hierarchy here, we see that the engineering walk through all difficulty to construct the knowledge. And then we have two problems, how to construct and how to control. As I say that the top level should control, and the esteem needs that is should inherent all this knowledge into the top level to control the knowledge.
Yes, but the knowledge worker here this is a motivation theory. So basically the idea with this theory is that you meet the bottom need, and when that is met, then you start being motivated for the next level. So we're not talking about how to coordinate. Basically, we're talking about when we are in our jobs, then if we classify, or if we look at it how it's normally being organized and what we do, then we would say that this is a classic or typical situation. But I agree with you in terms of this. So if you look at, a modern type of knowledge worker, where you're not situated together with your manager. Basically, you can be placed in, you can have colleagues in Bangalore or in the US or in China, and you're placed here in Denmark. So we have virtual teams. So if we look back at Kasper's diagrams, so you are actually in a team, you're in a ballast matrix, or maybe you're in a very flat organization at a hierarchy. So you're in a team, but it's placed all across the world. So how do you then coordinate? Maybe your manager is coming into your office as a double robotic, so he's there present, but he's only there on a screen. And your knowledge sharing is all done via different type of technologies. So this is a situation that a lot of you will be in. Very exciting jobs, everywhere in the world, in the office or out in the field. So when we look at that, then something changes here. Because the minute we get out there, or we are the client for a longer type of period, we have in one of our research projects about knowledge work and distance management, maybe you're in a situation where you need a police escort to get to the airport because you're in a very insecure area, or you don't even have access to tap water, so you maybe can't even get something, you can't take a shower, you can maybe wash your hands, but you're actually far away or in remote areas that leaves you without the basic needs. And then we also have situations where we have consultants being placed in the corner, not in the corner office, but in the corner with a very poor desk and feeling very lonely because they don't have anyone to talk to. And of course a situation where you don't have access, especially if you're in the remote areas, to your manager and your family and friends and colleagues. So the Wi-Fi and the power is down, if you can see that. Then the situation changes and you have a difficulty in actually performing as you're supposed to and sharing knowledge and coordinating with others. And then what happens to this? Any suggestions for then how would it when we then characterize the knowledge work if we have these conditions? Are we still in the top bottom, or have we lowered? Yes, there's a comment there.
I think we have lowered it,
Yes, well, how far do you think we go?
actually down to probably the safety of the
Yes.
It depends on which situation you focus on.
Yes.
For example, with the consultant,
Yeah.
you would be at the belongingness,
Yes.
and with the, the police escort, you would be at the safety,
Yeah.
and the physical,
Yeah.
logical would be the
Yeah, the tap
water
water,
stuff.
water that you don't have. Yes, and that's true. And that's where it then changes as a manager. So though you have your diagram with, and you can see where your team is placed, you as a manager, you need to change your focus. Now it's not about providing good jobs and good tasks and motivate at the top level. Now you need to make sure that they actually have access to Wi-Fi and their colleagues and family. And so how do we make sure that there's actually power when you're in the middle of the jungle? Do you need to set up a solar panel, or what do you need to do? So your focus in your management, it changes when you have knowledge work across distances. Yeah?
This is just a simple point to say, we've seen a lot of reports that when they go into the reward structures, they say, well, we need to do some sort of implement an incentive system. There need to be bonuses, and there needs to be stricter control, and this is going to motivate people a lot. Well, try to look into Daniel Pink and his drive, the surprising truth about what motivates us. Because it says something that the three main things that develop or motivate a knowledge worker, that's basically autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And the incentive system, the money, the bonuses, it might be nice, but it's not what really motivates you. You have a lot of people that goes into shitty paid jobs because it's just rewarding, it's interesting, and they have an interesting job situation. I mean, a lot of people work in universities, well, we do it for exactly these three things. It's not for the money, because usually our students go out and get the same salary as we do after 20 years. It's quite pathetic. Well, anyway, just make sure it's just not about bonuses. There's something about intrinsic motivation that really is a big driver. So just quickly about people practices, it is about who you choose. If you are a company that wants the best people in the world, then you recruit that, and you have to pay for it, and you make sure that there's training and development that supports this, and labor relations that works for this, and of course the benefits again, and performance appraisals, and the feedback has to be top-notch as well. But it depends on your situation in the company. What can you, with the product that you're developing and you want to market, what can you actually sell? What can you develop? Which part of these should you focus on? Is it pay, or is it the intrinsic motivation? What can we give our employees that motivates them to come to work every day and do their best? Is it a lot of money? Or is it a good culture? Is it an interesting product? Is it a good environment? These are the things that go into your people practices. And again, don't just go for we need incentives. It's not enough. It's too simple. So basically, in the end, it's also about how do you perceive your employees? And there are, of course, it's two extremes, but it's a basic theory that says if you have a manager and he designs an organization, he takes two approaches. One is the theory X. Every employee is lazy and dislikes works, and they need a whip, and they need something to make them work, and that's the way we motivate. Or the theory Y, which is sort of the autonomy, mastery, purpose. They're not inherently lazy. They will do things, and if we give them a good chance, they will do their best in what is good for the organization. So it's two different approaches, two extremes, and if you go out and interview, you will see elements of both in managers, and sometimes that also it translates into how they make the organization and an organizational control system. And with that, we have a 15-minute break. Mm-hmm. So 5 minutes past.
Yeah, and then we will say welcome to Bård Grande from Novo Nordisk, and he will tell us about how you do this in practice in Novo Nordisk. Yes, see you soon.